Hello there and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about concept cars and kind of what are they, when did they originate, and what are they all about. But before we do, if you like the content and you want to continue seeing more, I would greatly appreciate a subscribe and a like, as that will help to push my content out to a bigger and broader audience. But without further ado, let's get on with the video. So, concept cars. If you haven't seen what they look like this, and this, and this. And sometimes they can look like this, or this. But ultimately, what are they? What is their purpose? Why do companies even spend the time to build these things, and arguably the resources and the money? And the answer is actually pretty simple. It's usually to show off what they're capable of, what they think the future might look like, or sometimes, in some cases, a future model of car that will come out. Although usually those are more, not as much a true concept car, those are more of a preview, but in any case, that can be what they are. Um, in the modern day, the concept car is usually some sort of futuristic EV car with crazy wacky features compared to what a normal car typically has. Some of the cars that I've seen in person at the LA Auto Show, I think if I remember correctly, the LA Auto Show usually has a few. Um, they can It can be something where maybe the front seats flip 180 and the car is envisioned to be this self-driving car of the future that you just punch in your destination and the car will drive you there, and then the front people can turn around, and it's sort of almost like a train car experience where the front passengers are facing the rear and you can just kind of have your conversations as you're going to where you're going. In other cases, it just showcases new technology that might be possible. There's a concept car recently that the steering wheel could transition from left to right side. In other cases, they can be something extremely wild, like the Mercedes. There's a Mercedes concept car that supposedly was grown from a type of seed that they had modified to grow into a car. At least that was the whole idea behind it. That was the claim. I don't remember if the actual concept car that they built was built that way. Um, if I remember correctly, if it is said that's how they built it, that's at least their claim. But that was the whole idea behind it, was what if we could grow a car? But if we turn the clock back to way, 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 way in the past, it's actually kind of hard to figure out what the first concept car was. There's several different cars that were claimed to be the first concept car. There's one that was built in like 1929. There's one that was built in 1938. And both of them have the status of this was the first concept car. But ultimately, it was sometime in the early 1900s, possibly. There is one article that talks about possibly in 1895 there was a concept car. Again, it's very hard to figure out this information. It seems like the records are not the best preserved on what was exactly the first concept car. But even back then, it seems like it was still kind of on this trend of this is what the future car could look like. But again, that's not always the case. There are times where it's more of a showcase of what the company can do. Like Toyota recently built a concept car. I believe it was either the FRSE or the FTSE. It's an EV roadster type car, and it seems more, rather than a this is what we think the future can look like, it was more of a if we were going to build a sporty EV two-door coupe, this is how we would do it, and this is what we're capable of. Nissan recently did a concept GTR that was all electric. Again, it seems more of a this is what we're capable of than a this is what we think the future is going to look like. There's typically a difference between those two. And also, there's a difference between there are fully functioning concept cars that you could do a couple things to make them road legal and you could drive them. And there's other ones that are not fully functioning. Typically, the ones that are not fully operational are still somewhat operational, but it's like you have to drive them at like 2 miles an hour, um, because they're not the build quality and everything is just not there for it to be driven at normal speeds. At least that's to my understanding. And every time that I've seen a concept car like that, it's always, oh, look at us, we're driving. Look, we're driving it, and they're driving it in like some courtyard at 2 miles an hour. Um, but again, that's not every concept car. There's even one that looked. I don't even know how to describe it. It was basically you had your frame and then kind of like a clamshell thing, and it was all glass. Like you couldn't really see into it the way it was tinted. You couldn't see in, but they could see out. It was fully electric. It was a two-seater, and the way you got in was it would open up like a clamshell, and you would get in, and then it would close back down over you, and it just looks really funky. Not something practical at all. It more of something to show off, and I think that one specifically was more of a home built. I don't recall it being built by any particular company. That was just a one man's desire to build something that was truly out there for attention. And that's the other thing too, is sometimes these cars are they can be built by a smaller group of people or even a single person as a this is my car. And that's not to be confused with people who build a kit car, because there are plenty of people who buy them. A single man has built a supercar. I mean, I guess in terms of performance and rarity, it does classify as one. But they build their own supercar, and it's a one-off. It is a custom-built car, and but it's not a concept car. That is separate from concept. But again, that's mostly what concept cars are today. And like I said, it is a little hard to find the history on them. Some of in the 50s, I will say, there was a fascination with flying cars and cars where you didn't have a roof; it was just a dome of glass. And I'll include pictures here. Um, Stuff that again, you look back at it and it's like I couldn't imagine, having a car that's the whole top end of it is just glass. Especially because you think about in any sort of hot climate, it's going to be like boiling lava inside that car. Everything else about it looked pretty similar to your typical 50s era car sedan, except for just they chopped the roof off and gave it a dome, piece of glass instead. And it's not always a dome. It's just it could be anything where it's just the whole roof is glass and there's no way to put any sort of shade up. It's all glass. Um, I don't know what their fascination at the time was with that, but obviously car design did not go that way. And of course, we still do not have flying cars today, but that was of that era. Those were the concept cars. And again, there's been a lot of other ones. I believe there was a Scion where the whole back end it was a convertible, but not as your typical type of convertible. It was kind of the whole back end of the car could open up. It was all glass. It was like these glass panes, and they could open up, and the whole back end would be open. Um, but again, it's typically very wild, out there, typically trying to be futuristic takes on this is what a car could be. But that's pretty much all I had to say about concept cars. I know, again, a little bit shorter of a video. Um, there's not a whole lot to say on concept cars. I just thought this would be more of a fun topic to talk about. But again, if you enjoyed it, I appreciate the support. I hope to see you next time. I did actually have a little bit of a blast looking through concept cars. If you're interested in it, I highly recommend looking into concept cars, the history of them, what some of the wackiest designs were, because there really are some truly out there designs that exist, and some they're always impractical. It's always there's no way this could become that this specific image of a car could become a real thing. It's always it's always a what if. It's someone taking just trying to visualize their idea to see is this feasible usually. Um but it's again it's pretty fascinating. From where I sit, I usually look at them and I go, that's impractical, that won't work. There's no way. Because it's just like the whole thing with if you have a steering wheel that because nowadays what they're trying to do is steering by wire or steer by wire. It's a similar principle to fly by wire, where the input that you have is not physically connected to what you're controlling. Rather, it's connected to some type of what would be called a potentiometer. The computer reads that and it reads, okay, multiple factors. So I know with Lexus, they came out with an EV SUV that has what's called a yoke, and it's not a full round steering wheel. It's like a rectangle, and you only have the holes on the bottom. So it's like you have to hold it like a Formula One steering wheel. And the thing that the issue you run into with that is because most people they're used to you have to turn the steering wheel multiple times to get the angle you need to pull into a parking spot or whatever. The way Lexus got around that was steering by wire, and basically depending on the situation it'll adjust how much the wheels will turn when you turn the steering wheel, but you can only go 90 degrees with it. So with this concept car that can move, it would be the same thing. It'd be steering by wire. And while that is cool to a certain extent, it's wildly impractical, because the thing that has to be remembered is um, it's much cheaper to just if you're selling a car that you're selling both in countries that have right-handed drive and countries that have left-handed drive, and you're selling the same car in both environments, it's usually cheaper just to have two different layouts of where you put the pedals and everything in order to meet the needs of those two countries, rather than because also if you move the steering wheel you also have to move the pedals. So it because those parts, as cool as that idea is, I do agree it's a very cool idea. The issue you're going to run into is that's yet another thing that can break. And now it's kind of a worse thing to have break, because if it breaks and the steering wheel and pedals are in the middle, now you can't drive it because your steering wheel and pedal are in between your two front seats. So it's stuff like that. It's like, this is cool, but I don't even think the people that designed it really think that this is going to be where the future is, unless the technology is so advanced that it's like it'll never break. But the way technology is currently, it'll probably it's not going to catch on anytime soon. But that's kind of the whole point, is look at this, it's cool, what if, and that sort of stuff. But again, it's all very interesting to look into these cars and the ideas behind them, and why do they do it, why do they spend the money on it. I mean, granted though, it's not usually that much money because they're only building the one prototype or the one concept car, and that's it. If it gets destroyed, it's gone. um, and they're not usually going to invest in building another one if it gets destroyed, because that's not the intended purpose for it, and probably all the tooling that they had to build it in the first place has been trashed. or repurposed for something else. So yeah, they're usually one-offs, and it's just kind of a fun little side project that these companies have. So I hope you enjoyed listening to this little talk on concept cars, and I know I have enjoyed recording it, and I look forward to seeing you guys again in the next video. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.